direct variation. Direct variation is followed by the equation y equals k times x. Okay. The k is called the constant of proportionality. Yes, I know that constant starts with the C, but for whatever reason, they want to represent that with a K. Your important word, your key words to know that it's direct variation is varies directly, and directly proportional. Basically, if you see that word direct, you know that we have a direct variation. In this lesson, we're going to use 3 different kinds of variation, so that's why it's important that you pay attention to which one we're using. Our graphical representation has a y-intercept of 0, 0 for these graphs. Which we will do more of next class. All right, take a look at number 1. What we are doing today is we are going to dissect these sentences step by step. Okay? In these sentences, it looks very short, but there are 3 things that we have to do. My first step is to make my equation. I make my equation based on that first part of the sentence. Okay? Y is directly proportional to x. What I have to do is I'm writing what I read. My variable is y. Is my equal sign. Every time you write an equal sign for these problems, your very next variable has to be k. That's your constant. And then it's directly proportional to x. Directly proportional means I'm going to multiply. So I have y equals kx. So that's step 1. Step 2 tells you to find the constant of proportionality. So when I do the second part of my sentence, this basically is telling me to find the k. Okay, what is your k? So I'm going to plug in and solve for k. So I have the same exact equation, y equals kx, but it says, and y is 15, and x is 3. It's all being multiplied. How do I get k by itself? Huh? Yeah, let's divide by 3 on both sides. So I'm left with k is equal to 5. Okay? We are not finished. All we did was we made our equation. That was step 1. We found our constant. That was step 2. The last step is to find our final answer based on the variable they are asking for. They're saying find y with x is 6. If you don't do this step by step, you try to plug in or you're trying to find y with x is 6 and you don't know k, then you're stuck because you can't solve for a variable if you have 2 variables left. So my equation is y equals k times x. It says to find y, so I don't know it, when x is 6. So my x is 6, and what's my k? 5. So I have y equals 5 times 6, which is what? 30. So my final answer is 30. What we are doing here is we are reading to make an equation. You plug in your first set of information to find your k, and then you're finding your final answer based on the variable they want you to find. Okay? Let's look at number 2. On number 2, my first part of my sentence says, B varies directly with C. So I'm going to start with y equals. What letter does it give me? B. So B varies, that's the equal sign. What comes after the equal sign? Huh? K. K always comes first. After your equal sign, K comes first. So it says B varies directly, because it's directly, I'm going to multiply with C. So we have B equals K times C. Does that part make sense? Deshaun, yeah? Okay. All right, so I'm done with making my equation. The second part is telling me, and C is 3 and B is 4. So guess what we're solving for? C is 3, B is 4. I don't know what K is, so I'm solving for K. How do I solve for K here? We're going to divide both sides by 3. My 3's cancel out, so I have K equals 4 over 3. That's not my answer, I just found my K. So this part's done. The last part of my equation says find C when B is negative 8. So I write down my same equation, B equals K times C, because that's what I used for the beginning. And now I'm plugging in what I know. I'm not using the C that I had in part 2, that's over and done with. My last part says find C when B is negative 8. What's my K? What do we get for that? 4 over 3, so plug that in. So we have 4/3 C is equal to 8. Okay, so you can use a couple different ways, but I'm going to get rid of a fraction. So I want to get rid of 4 over 3. I'm going to multiply it by what? The reciprocal, which is 3 over 4. I do that to both sides. Okay? So on the right side, my 4/3 and my 3/4 cancel out, so I'm left just C. And what's 3/4 times negative 8? Negative 6. This is my final answer. Or you guys think how it's basically a 3-step process? Sometimes it's a 2-step process. Sometimes they just say find your constant, which means we stop at K. Okay? That was the first variation. My second variation is inverse. Okay? For inverse, we want to divide. My equation for that is y is equal to K divided by x. Okay? So because it's inverse, I'm dividing. Direct, I multiply. Inverse, I'm dividing. My constant of proportionality is still my K. So my key words here, if I'm reading my sentences, is going to say varies inversely or inversely proportional. You can abbreviate that if you want. All right, your graphical representation we'll talk about more on day 2, because it really doesn't affect us today, but that's what your graph will look like. Let's look at my example. All right, when I read this, M is inversely proportional to P. This is step 1, is to make my equation. What variable do I have first? M equals what? What's next after my equal sign? Okay, and because it says inversely, I'm going to divide what's under my division symbol. Okay, that's how we explain that. M is inversely proportional to P. Okay, because it says inverse, I know I have to divide. So let's plug in. When M is 4 and P is 2. So let's plug in 4. I don't know K. My P is 2. You can also solve this a couple ways, but let's do it the way you're most comfortable with. How would you solve this?
Multiply by
Yeah, you would multiply by positive 2 on both sides, right? I mean, you could do 2 over k, but that's just going to cancel out. So, my 2's are gone, and I'm left with k is equal to positive 8. Alright, so step 2 is done. You got my constant. We're good. Now I'm going to rewrite my equation. M equals k over p. So then it says find m, so that's still going to be my variable, when p is negative 8. Well, my k was what? Positive 8. So what is m going to be? What is positive 8 divided by negative 8? Negative 1. And we're done. Okay, I want you guys to watch how I do number 4. I want you to solve it just the way that I'm solving it. Okay? So make sure you're following along. It says H varies inversely as G. Alright, so how do I write this out? What's my equation? H equals K divided by G. Alright, it says when H is 1/2 and G is negative 6. Alright, so that was part 2. Okay, so you can solve this the way we've been doing it by multiplying negative 6 to both sides. But I want to show you guys this. Do we see how this is already like a fraction equals to a fraction? So it's already a proportion. We can just cross multiply, right? So 2 times k is 2k, and 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. How would I solve for k? Yeah, let's divide by 2 on both sides. So k is equal to negative 3. And I will explain to you why I solved it that way. Okay, I try to cross multiply whenever I can because it limits mistakes. Alright, the end of my problem says find G when H is positive 63. So I rewrite my equation. Alright, H is 63. My K is negative 3. And we're trying to find G. How would you solve this problem? Huh? No. And that's what everyone thinks. Everyone thinks that we're going to multiply by 3 because you're used to multiplying by that number. What we would have to do is multiply by the denominator. But what I like to do, let's make this a proportion. Put that 63 over 1. Let's cross multiply. 63 times G is 63G. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Now how do I solve for G? Again, you divide by 63. Do you see how it's much easier to see it now? If you wanted to multiply each side by G, you could absolutely do that. But I like to get a proportion whenever I can and just cross multiply. So G is going to equal negative 1 over 21. So far, so good? Everyone has this down? Alright, SOL question. If y varies inversely with the square of x. So let's start there. So y varies. How do I show inversely? It's going to be k divided by the square of x. So that means I have x squared on the bottom. If y varies inversely with the square of x, then it asks you, what is the constant of proportionality when y is 10 and x is 5? Notice, they aren't asking you for 3 different things. This is a 2-step problem. We have our equation, my next step, they're just asking for the k. So once we get our k, then we stop. There's nothing else to do after that. So they said y was 10, and x was 5. Alright, what do we get? What is 5 squared? 25. You can multiply each side by 25. I turned this into a proportion, and I solved it. K times 1 is k. 10 times 25 is 250. Once I have my k, I'm done with this problem. That's all they asked me for. They asked for the constant. I stop when I get to k. So far, so good. Anthony, you good? Alright, stay with me. Alright, so sometimes they're not going to give you a variable. You have to make it up on your own. Let's read this. The time it takes to do a job is inversely proportional to the number of workers. If 8 workers can do a job in 6 days, then how many days would it take for 16 workers to do the same job? So my first part of this sentence is what's so important. On top of your sentence, let's get some variables. The time, that's important, it takes to do a job is inversely proportional to the number of workers. If you want to put an n instead of workers in each number, that's fine with me, as long as you can tell what you're doing. So let's write out my equation. The time it takes to do a job is inversely, what's after my equal sign? Okay. How do I show it inverse? Divide to the number of workers. So I have T equals K divided by W. All right, if 8 workers, 8 goes there, could do a job in 6 days, that's my time. So let's stop there, because that's part 2. Okay, let's figure out my K. I would make this a proportion. K times 1 is K. 6 times 8 is 48. Okay, so we have my K, my constant. Then how many days will it take for 16 workers to do the same job? Well, I'm going to rewrite my equation. T equals K divided by W. Okay, so the time, let's see, I don't know that yet. My K was 48. My workers, they have 16. So they want to know how long would it take for 16 workers to do the same job. What's 48 divided by 16? 3. So it would take 3 days. Sorry. Oh. Burn it.
Cool.
Burn them out. Honey protector.
Oh, that's a great number.
I did not realize that. Oh, yep. It feels nice. Alright. Alright, so part 3 says inverse or direct. Okay? In order to do these problems, we always want to solve for y. On number 7, how do I solve for y? Oh my gosh, you know this. You have to divide each side by x. Make sure you show this. My x cancels out, so I have y equals -2 over x. Would this be inverse or direct variation? It's inverse because we're dividing. So you would write inverse. You will have something like this on your test. Number 8 is already in y equals. Would that be inverse or direct? Be careful, it's a trick question. Are we multiplying my x and my number? No, we're subtracting, right? We're not dividing, so this would be neither, actually. This is neither because if it was like y equals 3x, well then that's direct. But that subtraction sign tells me that that is neither. Either one. Oh, number 9, let's get y by itself. I would turn this into a proportion. Y times 1, I get y. 4 times x, I get 4x. Which one is that? Y equals 4x. That's direct. And it's direct because we are multiplying. Okay, we're going to skip the part that says let's reflect. We're not going to reflect today. This is our last variation. Okay, we've learned direct, directly we multiply. We learned inverse, that's when we divide. Now it's joint. Joint variation is very similar to direct. The only difference is we have an extra variable. Okay, in direct we just had a k in the letter. Now we have a k in 2 letters. So your main equation for this is z equals k times x times y. At least my water's so freezing cold. Alright. My constant of proportionality is which letter? It's our K. So my key words here would be varies, jointly, and jointly proportional. When you see that word jointly, you know you're going to have 2 variables and a K. Alright, let's practice these. Alright, z varies jointly with x and y. Okay, so if I write this as I'm reading it, z varies, I have my k after my equal sign, jointly, so I'm going to multiply with x and y. Alright, that's part 1, to make my equation. Part 2 says when x is 3, so I plug that in, y is 8, and z is 6. So I'm solving for k. What's 3 times 8? 24. How do I get k by itself? I have k times 24. Or 24k, depending on how you write it. It'd be a multiply. How do I get rid of it? Divide. I'm going to divide both sides by 24. So k equals, what's 6 divided by 24? 1/4. Right? So we have part 2. Part 1 was my equation, I have that. Part 2 is my k. Let's rewrite my equation because now I need it for my final answer. And it says find z, so I don't know what that is. My k is 1/4 when x is -4 and y is 7. Be careful to not go back and forth between sentences. I've seen that happen where people plug in 6 with your final answer. That 6, that z is 6 is with that second part. So make sure once you move on completely. Alright, so what do you get? 1/4 times -4 times 7. You should get -7. So far, so good? You guys getting this? Make sense? Alright, good. Alright, so then we have z varies jointly with x and y. So let's write it out. Notice when I do my z's, I just put the little line through it, because if not, I could get confused. I just do 2, depending on how soft my handwriting is. But Z equals my next letter is going to be K. Jointly tells me I'm multiplying, so jointly with X and Y. When X is 1, Y is 1/3, and Z is 5. All right, let's multiply. What's 1/3 times 1? Just 1/3, right? So we have K times 1/3. If I want to get rid of this 1/3, I need to do what? I'm going to multiply both sides by what? Yep, by the reciprocal, which is, it actually looks better if I would do this. You guys can see it better. If I multiply by the reciprocal, that's 3/1, or you can just write 3. So that cancels out, and I'm left with K equals 15. Alright, so part 2 is done. The last part of that says find Z. Well, let's rewrite my equation. Z equals K times X times Y. Find Z. My K was 15. When X is -4 and Y is +7. Type that all into your calculator. What do you get? 15 times -4 times 7. What do you guys get? -420. That's your final answer. If you box up your K and your final answer, I'm okay with that. As long as I can tell what your final answer is. Sometimes I get into a habit of always boxing my answers, that I box up my K. Fine with me. Whatever works. Alright. Michaela, give me a equation for this one. The Y varies jointly with X and Z. What are right?
Y equals K X.
Okay. What is the constant of proportionality? So we're just finding my K. That's all they're asking for. Y is 30. X is 4. And Z is 5. What's 4 times 5? 20. How do I get rid of that 20 to get K by itself? Divide both sides by 20. So my 20s cancel out, and I'm left with K equals 3/2 if you reduce it. That's what they asked us for. That's where we stop. There's no final answer beyond that because you just stop there. Okay. That's the wall question. All right. It says, the volume of a container varies jointly with the square of its radius, which is r, and its height, which is h. The container has a height of 10 centimeters, a radius of 6, and a volume of 377 cubic centimeters. What is the volume of a container with a radius of 4 and a height of 4? Let's go back to the beginning. My first step is to make my equation. So it says, I'm going to call the volume, I'm just going to call that V, varies jointly with the square of the radius. We call the radius R, so we can call height H. Okay, so I'm going to write this out. I have the volume, so V equals K, varies jointly. Jointly means I'm going to combine everything, with the square of its radius, so R squared, and its height. So that's k times r squared times h. Be careful with that square of the radius. All right, the container has a height of 10 centimeters, so that 10 goes in my h spot. A radius of 6 centimeters, so that would go here. And a volume of 377. In your calculators, type in, what is 6 squared times 10? What do you guys get?
360.
So we have k times 360, okay? So we're solving for k right now. We'll get back to the rest of the equation soon. So I'm going to divide both sides by 360. Michaela, in your calculator, type in 377 divided by 360. Does that reduce? If you hit math and hit enter? It doesn't, right? So my k, just leave it as this. Do not give me a decimal. 377 divided by 360. That's my k. Your answer is more correct. You just use the fraction. You're not rounding with your decimals. All right, so we already did this, right? That's all good. All right, for my final answer, let's keep my same equation. B equals k times r squared times h. And it says, what is the volume? We don't know. My k, we said, was 377 divided by 360. What is the volume of a container with a radius of 4? So that's 4 squared and a height of 4. You guys could probably just take this right into your calculators. I'll do it on mine too so we can see. How do I get this? Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay, this is good enough. All right. So I'm going to do 377 divided by 360 in parentheses. And then I have my 4 in parentheses squared. And then times 4. Did you guys all get 67.02 repeating? Good. All right, so my answer for the volume is 67.02. We show our volume with, he doesn't help me, centimeters cubed, right? Volume. That's my volume for that one. All right, one last thing, part 5. Part 5 is writing the variation equations, okay? This is where it gets a little bit harder, but not really. Let's write what we see. X varies inversely with y and directly with z. So my important parts here is that we're inversely with y and then directly with z. So x varies, so that's going to be x equals. After my equal sign, I need to write what letter? K, don't forget it. So x equals k. And then it's inversely with y. That inverse tells me I'm dividing. And directly with z. Because it's directly with z, I'm multiplying. Does that z go on the top or the bottom? It actually goes on the top. And it goes on the top because we're talking about x. So compared to x, the y is inversely, the z is directly, which makes it like on top. Does that make sense? If it was going to be on the bottom, it would just say x varies inversely with y and z. Both letters would go to the bottom. Okay, so that's number 14. On 15, we have y varies jointly with z and the square root of x, okay? So that y equals k. Jointly tells me I'm going to multiply everything together. So jointly with z and the square root of x. Make sure you don't do x squared. That's a very, very common mistake. It says the square root, so you have to draw your radical. So that's y equals k times z times root x. Okay, and my last one. W varies inversely with x and jointly, with y and z. So W varies, so W equals k, inversely with x, so I'm going to divide by x, that goes on the bottom, and jointly with y, which goes back on top, and z, which is on top as well. If it would have said inversely with x, y, and z, then everything would be on the bottom. But whatever is inversely, that's what we divide by. If it's jointly or direct, then it's on top. Does that make sense? All right, good. You guys survived. So turn to your practice. This is your classwork. I'm giving you guys classwork grades basically every day. And mainly that's just to offset the fact that this unit is very difficult. If you look at your assignment sheet, you guys are having mini quizzes in between your tests. I split your test up into 2 tests. So you have a mini test after day 4 and another mini test for days 6, 7, and 8. Okay, I'm not combining everything into one because the second part of this unit is very difficult with like fractions and numbers and letters and all the stuff you guys love. So make sure that you do your practice. I'll give you 10 minutes and then I'll put the answers up. Hey guys, let's finish this up. I'll work this out with you guys. Alright, so number 1. Did you guys get recalibrate? Alright, did you guys get M varies directly with P? So M equals KP. Number 1. When M is 75 and P is 10, divide by 10, divide by 10. What'd you guys get for K? You got what? 15 over 2? Okay, or 7.5. Normally keep it as a fraction unless it's an even fraction, a nice one like this. So part 2 says, find N, the P is 16. What'd you guys get for N? $120, good. Actually, everyone hold up your paper so I can make sure you're working. Good. All right, number 2. R varies inversely with T. Okay, when R is 168 and T is 24. Okay, what do you guys get for K? Did I do something wrong? I got 4,032. You see what you did there? Okay, so if I keep my same equation of R equals K divided by T, it says find R when T is 30. So divide 4,032 by 30. Did you guys get 134.4? So when you have a lot of work like this, just make sure that you box your answer so I don't have to go searching for it. Okay, so I'll check for your answer to see if it's right or wrong, and then if it's wrong, I'll go through and check your work. Number 3, Y varies jointly with P and Q. If Y is 144 and P is 12 and Q is 8, they're asking for the K. Okay, so we don't have a 3-step problem. So you guys get 144 equals K times 96. All right, then you divide it by 96. So for K, you get 1.5. You get 1.5. So look, I divided both sides by 96. All right, number 4. Write the equation. So there's nothing to solve, we're just writing. T varies directly with the square of m and inversely with q. That's what you should have. T equals k m squared divided by 2. Sorry, divided by q. You guys get this one? Good. All right, and last one. The time in minutes, I'll call that T. You need to type a 2,000 word paper, varies inversely with the rate that you can type. All right, let's go ahead and write that out. So the time in minutes, you need to type a 2,000 word paper, varies inversely with the rate. So you should have T equals K divided by R. That's step 1. All right. When typing 35 words per minute, that's my rate, you finish in 60 minutes. So that's my time, 60. So let's find my K. I'm gonna make this a proportion and cross multiply, so I get K equals 60 times 35, which is 2,100. Okay. I'm going to keep my same equation, T equals K divided by R. All right, so it says, how many minutes will it take when typing 45 words per minute? So my rate is going to be 45. My K is 2,100. And they want to know how long it's going to take me. So 2,100 divided by 45, and you should get 46.666. So the time it's going to take you is, we can round that, right? Or you can just write 46.6 minutes. That's fine. Or you can round it to 47. That is your answer. It'll take you 47 minutes. All good? All right, good.